Chris, aka Nana, is the lovable grandmother of the Healer family and actually has had a pretty long life. But during her life, we want to check out some of her deeds on which ones are actually good and which ones are evil, considering that, well, she has been around for quite a while. Well, not really Bob, though, considering that we don't really know what happened to him. So that's today's topic. We'll be checking out Chris's deeds from good to evil. Now, just like Pat in our previous Good to Evil video, she doesn't have that many appearances, so this list will be pretty short. So, like usual, let's start things off with our most good deed and work our way down to the most evil deed. So, kicking off this list and getting our gold medal of good might be confusing, but honestly, this is probably the best that Chris has ever done, and that's simply just being a great Nana. While we do see some episodes of her basically interacting with her grandchildren, and more specifically her sons, but more often than not, whenever they either spend time with her or she spends time with them, they usually all interact together. There's not really a lot to say, considering that she's just literally doing the role of being a grandmother and there's nothing too much to talk about, but when you do your job good enough, then you'll have something just as pure as this. Especially since one example, which we'll definitely get to later, there hasn't been anything really bad or even minor to talk about that's actually worth noting that would make this a little lower on the list. So, we feel confident that Chris is definitely a great Nana, or Grandma, if you want to say that. Getting our Silver Medal of Good is something definitely admirable for people who can't really stand Muffin, and that's actually cooperating with Muffin in Charades. So, while Muffin is being very picky about wanting the ballerina card, getting her own tutu and even ballerina music to even perform in the game, while Chris does get tired of it, and so does everyone else in the episode, and that's probably the biggest reason why it was bad, Chris surprisingly rolls with it and lets her do whatever she needs. Now, you could honestly argue that this is rather a bad thing, considering that this is just a child letting their parent or grandparent do whatever as they're told, but really though, all she wanted was just some parts to help her become a ballerina in a game, and it's not like this is in general though. If this were a more realistic approach, like maybe getting a toy or something, that would be the equivalent of a temper tantrum. And while she almost had that here, the reason why this is being placed a bit higher is for doing two things. One, actually cooperating with Muffin and not making her any more mad than normal. And secondly, we actually see how calm Chris is. Well, sure, she does get annoyed, but at least she's calm about it. If anybody here actually does hate Muffin and actually cannot stand her, we don't blame you. But how Chris was able to handle everything while also enjoying her performance, how can we not give this our Silver Medal of Good? So, have you ever tried to perform a handstand and you actually did successfully, but no one was nearby? Well, take notes for anyone who's curious, because Chris was the only one that actually watched Bingo do her handstand in, well, the episode Handstand. In the episode, Bingo was constantly trying to perform her handstand and letting people watch her, but while everyone else was busy and only promised it and immediately did whatever after, the only person that actually did watch her do the handstand throughout the entire episode was actually Chris. While this doesn't really have a lot to talk about, it's just something nice to bring up. But we had to give it our bronze medal considering that, well, Bingo only wanted one person to actually just watch her do a handstand, and Chris was the only person. And how could we not feel bad for Bingo just letting everyone else mind their own business? So, believe it or not, we're actually on our final good deed. So, this might not even be a good deed and just rather letting them play, but we feel like letting Bluey and Bingo draw their ideas in the episode Escape is worth mentioning. While Chris only really shows up at the end of the episode, since most of it was just Bluey and Bingo imagining what kind of ideas they could have, as well as just trying to get near Chili and Bandit, Chris actually does support their ideas. Well, whenever they go see her, by the way. Whenever they actually did draw anything, Chris seemed genuinely interested in what they could draw and imagine. Now again, this is literally just her seeing her grandkids draw and just have fun, but still, we thought we mentioned that, and there's not really much for the good deeds. So now, it's time for our bad to evil deeds. We only have two. Unlike Pat, who only had one bad deed, we actually have two bad deeds for Chris, and getting our Silver Medal of Evil is trying to hit Bandit with a flip-flop. In the fairy tale episode, by the way. While the scene is incredibly short, considering it's only for like a few seconds, but still, we thought we'd mention it. When Chris discovers that all her mini cereals were gone and asks which one of her kids ate them all, Rat and Stripe immediately pointed to Bandit, and then she literally attempted to chase him with a flip-flop. Now, thankfully, we never actually get to see her hit him, which is definitely a good thing, and the main reason why this saves us from the very bottom of the list, but this is still not a good thing. If any parents are watching this, abuse is never a good thing. Well, yes, we could kind of understand why she would be mad, but still, going after your son with a flip-flop is definitely not a good thing. But what could be worse? Well, if anyone were listening in, this could have easily taken the gold. And, we could easily hear you out. But we only have one deed that's slightly worse. So, getting our gold medal of evil is forcing Baby Bluey to walk with olive oil and baby rice. Which I know might seem a little overreactive, but hear us out here. While Chris was completely fine before the scene even happened, it's when this scene happened that she decided to put her plan into action. Now, to her credit, it does sound like she does have good intentions, but that's the only nice thing we could say about this. It feels like she literally came up with this, but then again, maybe she did it on Rad, Bandit, and Stripe when they were kids. Who knows? But when Bandit even stated that this isn't legal anymore, yeah, she's performing something illegal here. And honestly, we could give this deed the bottom spot alone for that one reason. And if this kept going, Baby Bluey would have possibly gotten hurt. And yeah, Bandit and Chili had the right to leave at that moment. So a bit of an odd choice, but this easily grabs the gold medal for the worst deed that Chris has ever done.